Welcome to the fifth episode of Vinyl and Celluloid, the podcast. This month's episode covers a hot topic that has dominated the media landscape for the last decade: superhero movies. Marvel versus DC, their impact in shaping the industry and dictating box office success. Defending the genre is Naima Solesala, a former cinematography and film student, social media and marketing manager, and manager and owner of the Instagram page Hello Film Lover. Naima, very happy to have you here on this episode. You go by the name of Hello Movie Lover.
Yeah, hello, film lover.
Film lover, yeah. Yes, in Instagram, and I mean you were just telling me about your background in actually in or studying in movies. So can you develop a bit more about that? What was the actual study? What drove you to that?
Sure. I've been loving movies all my life. I grew up watching movies in my grandma's living room. She's the biggest cinephile in the house. So she likes a lot of classics. She introduced me to Hitchcock, to Orson Welles, and I've been just experiencing movies as a part of my life. And because of that, I wanted to study. When I left high school, I was like, I want to go to university, but I really want to study film because it's my passion. So there was a film school in Barcelona, and it was a really good experience, but maybe now I wouldn't do it just because the film industry is a little bit tough and they don't really prepare you for that. It was a really good experience. I learned so much, and I tried my luck going to LA and working for production companies there. But the thing is that it's a really saturated market, and it's really difficult to get in. So, but yeah, it was an amazing experience. I still love movies, and yeah.
Sounds great. I mean, it's the same thing. I guess both my parents were a bit of an influence. My first movie was The Lion King back in '94, but my grandmother was also one of the biggest cinephiles in the family, and she also introduced me a bit to. I wouldn't say as sophisticated as Hitchcock or Orson Welles, but definitely some of the classics. She actually enjoyed John Ford quite a lot. So,
that's good.
so yeah, that's. I guess the zenith or the most complex suggestions she would make. Um, so basically, yeah, I think on this episode today we're tackling the biggest trend, or one of the biggest trends that has taken Hollywood and actually the whole media landscape by storm in the last 11 years, and that's the superhero movies, and in all their shape and forms. So basically, I mean, the way I see it, we can easily split this, I don't know, this movement into four different areas and or four different periods. One of them would be from 2008 and I guess to 2012, where you had the first of all The Dark Knight, which was a complete game changer. I went to see it twice back 11 years ago. And also you had the grounding or the foundations of what is the MCU with Iron Man and obviously the Incredible Hulk, which people choose not to talk about. and this era lasted until 2012, when you first had the first Avengers movie, which was obviously groundbreaking. Then I would actually split the second era between 2012 until 2016, which was consolidation. DC trying to come up with their own cinematic universe and not doing so well, and actually the evolution of the genre. So back in 2015, I wrote a piece 4 years ago about the superhero genre being a bubble. And actually, I wasn't counting on what happened in 2016, which was the release of the first rated R superhero movie, Deadpool, and afterwards Logan, and obviously that was also I would say a different era. From 2016 until today, I would say we are in the third stage, which is now MCU completely dominates the whole landscape. There's room for bits and pieces such as the X-Men property, which is now part of Disney. But again, it was a bit of the certification of the domination of the MCU, and Well, DC kind of taking the back seat, and the fourth era, which will be the one starting now, post the Infinity War saga. I don't know. You're a fan. I'm not. I'm not sure if I'm using the right terminology with the fan, but that's at least my view. Do you think this is a sensible split? I mean, how do you see the last 11 years overall?
Well, actually, maybe I will put some of the superhero maybe before that with all the Spider-Man movies, and that's what I grew up watching basically. And then they kind of exploited that, and they saw that it worked, and there was a lot of Batman movies, and I think superheroes they've always been around. You can see from the Wonder Woman TV show or the Batman and Robin TV shows that they were wearing very funny masks. So I think the superheroes have always been around, but of course in the last years has been a really important genre. And I think people has really people that didn't care about superheroes at all is being really just drawn into that, and it's really interesting actually. I've always been a fan of superheroes, and I haven't read the comic books. I have a lot of friends that do, and they are really loyal, and they really know the whole story of the Marvel universe in the comic books. But I really like superheroes, but I think now we have a really quality superhero stories, and we have good movies. And I know some of the people, especially a lot of, I call them people who they don't value or they don't think superhero is a movie per se. We shouldn't think of superhero movies as quality cinema. But I don't agree with that because any action is as good as any action film.
Yes, we can agree on that,
Yeah.
and again, picking up on that, I completely agree. I think the template or the blueprint of the current action superhero movie, namely, if you look at the MCU movies, you have star-studded casts. I mean, I really can't count how many Oscar winners and nominees you had in the last Avengers movie. And when you look back at the first Superman movie released back in '78, you
Yeah.
also had Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, which were hot properties back then. Ned Beatty, again, Academy Award nominated actor, and plenty of other actors. So it was really an ensemble cast, almost
Yeah.
similar to what you used to see in those disaster movies like Earthquake and The Towering Inferno. So I guess the template for that was established in '78. It then evolved with Batman, and again, you see top quality cast, not only in the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher era, but also in the Christopher Nolan era. So I completely agree. I think there was a period of validation, but the principle were there. I think the main evolution was, and again, I'm not assessing individual quality of the movies, but actually the whole flooding of the market with a new superhero movie every 2 months, and that's
Yeah.
why I choose to somewhat focus on this 11-year period from 2008 to the current year. And taking up on that, I mean, we will go into the quality and the impact of the genre, but I would love to hear a take on the following. So this year actually saw two very similar properties, I would say, but with very distinct outcomes. You had Avengers Endgame, most profitable or the highest grossing movie of the year so far. I don't think Star Wars will beat that, but it will come close. And it's already a top 10 highest grossing movie of all time, adjusted to inflation. And then on the other hand, like I believe 2 months later or 1 month later, you had the last installment of the X-Men saga, Dark Phoenix, which
Yeah.
had the lowest opening weekend for a major DC or Marvel property in the last decade. And I mean, they were released 2 months apart, obviously different storylines, different casts, different fan bases, I would say. But before even the new Spider-Man Far From Home is released, are we actually seeing a superhero fatigue?
I don't. I have two opinions on that. I think a lot of people is done with superheroes because they're not a fan in the first place. They haven't been they like superheroes, but like you said, there is a new superhero movie coming every few months, so people gets bored. It's like, oh, another superhero movie. What kind of story they're gonna explain? So I kind of understand that, but at the same time, people that follows the MCU universe, for example, Endgame was. Well, we saw that with Infinity War was the movie of the year, and something that people was expecting for the last 10 years, because everything, all the movies build up to that moment when all the superheroes meet, and because Infinity War was absolutely amazing and fantastic, and people loved it, and it was not only because of that ensemble, but because it was really well done. So if you were watching all the superhero movies and then you watch Infinity War, it was like amazing. And then everyone was waiting for Endgame. So I kind of understand that that has a more impact that an X-Men movie can do. So can have, sorry. So I kind of understand that difference between X-Men and MCU, especially because X-Men, I believe, is a very different kind of superhero for me. I grew up also watching all the X-Men movies, and I think X-Men has always been more dark and more personal. And yeah, especially Dark Phoenix is quite dark and introspective, and it talks about a lot of like mental health issues, and it's a bit more, it's completely different than the MC universe in my view. Yeah.
Hmm. So you think it's closer to what Nolan did with Batman, but without the street cred to actually back it up?
I wouldn't say that because I really like the Nolan movies, um, but yeah, I think X Men is not for everyone, and people is a bit frustrated with the X-Men movies, and I kind of get that because they did the Days of Future Past, and I mean, not everyone was happy about that, but yeah, I think Endgame was absolutely, everyone was waiting for Endgame to happen, so it kind of makes sense that it was more successful.
Hmm. It's interesting you mentioned Days of Future Past. I didn't watch the movie myself, but one of my good friends, Rocky, he was telling me just the other weekend how it was one of the best superhero movies he had ever watched, and
Really?
he sees them all, right? He goes to the
Yeah.
movies on a constant basis. The last time we went to the movies was to see Godzilla, a non-superhero movie. But as you can see, I'm not averse to franchise or blockbusters, not at
Yeah.
all. But yeah, he was just mentioning that and how he didn't see Dark Phoenix, but he was just telling me how Days of Future Past was actually very good in the sense that the same way probably Star Trek. The J.J. Abrams version, where he combined two parallel universes or two different universes, was excellent as well. So
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess it's a bit more niche. So that's
I think so. I really like X-Men, so I did enjoy that movie, but I don't think people really likes or understand the X-Men. And if you haven't grown up watching the X-Men, which were before all the like Iron Man or MCU universe, I think you're not really like excited about it. So yeah, I think it's a more niche market, definitely.
it's very interesting because actually I grew up well when I was a teen it was all about Spider-Man. Yes, I went to see Spider-Man 3. Part of the problem, not the solution. And I recall distinctly watching X-Men, the first and second movies from the original batch, and even going to see Wolverine back in 2009. So I'm not very averse, but it didn't make an impact on me like Nolan's Batman trilogy did.
I don't think any superhero movies will have an impact as the Nolan movies had. I really admire Christopher Nolan as a director, and I think he really brought quality to superhero movies, and he changed the meaning of a lot of things. And I think a lot of people who didn't care about superhero movies, they really enjoyed watching the trilogy. I think,
I
yeah.
think, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, based on that, I mean, of an offside question, and actually ties into my following question. Um, I'm really looking forward to see the Todd Phillips Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, because yes, we've seen the Joker played by tons of actors: Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, and Jared Leto. that's only on movies, right? But I'm really looking forward to see the individual standalone Joker movie, which for me doesn't look at all like it won't be a superhero movie. I think it deals a lot with maybe
Yeah.
the similar issues that you just described around Dark Phoenix. So mental condition and really as a story behind the Joker.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really interesting when we had some of the movies such as Maleficent, right? That they see and they want to understand what the actual villain's problems are, and I think that's really interesting. And I think the new movie is gonna be very different. It's not gonna be a superhero movie. It's gonna be very yeah. It's gonna talk about things like mental health and why people become what they become. Everyone has problems, and you don't become a villain just because you want to. It's just because all the issues you've had. And I think the Joker is such an interesting character because he is a sociopath and a psychopath. So I think it's really interesting to, well, it's a very interesting character to discover. So I can't wait. I'm really excited, actually.
Yeah, same. And as someone who does stand up comedy on as a hobby, definitely keen on seeing at least how he will be portrayed in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that ties perfectly into my next question, which is, I mean, we see that Disney managed to make the cinematic universe work, and they did it out of necessity. So basically, the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise was the only thing they had going on a solid basis as a cash cow. That stopped, so they needed to look elsewhere. And they were quite smart about it because they actually managed to do, for me, a cinematic universe is simply a sequel-driven franchise 2.0. And I mean, when you said people were looking forward to Infinity War and Endgame, it was an arc, right? So basically, you started, you got a connection with the characters, and then you almost see it as part of a sequel, or almost like if you're watching a TV show that has separate episodes dedicated to specific characters, right? So for me, that's the vision, and they were very smart the way they articulated everything. And I think there are two ways going forward. Like you said right now, so the Joker will be a very specific movie, and I know that's not MCU, but for example, Black Panther was completely different because it took a non-white leading character and developed their own movie around them. So they actually are now going into very specific characters that don't have a certain representation within the movie industry, and that's, I think, crucial for the continuity. But my question that will work, and Black Panther is the proof that it works. Now that the characters like Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr., they won't be appearing, at least in the foreseeable future. I mean, will the MCU be able to continue to enjoy the popularity it has enjoyed so far? Because nobody's going to replace Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, because people pay to see Robert
Yeah.
Downey Jr.'s Iron Man. They just don't go and say, oh, I want to see Iron Man or I want to see a Robert Downey Jr. movie. It's the combination of these two that actually make the three movies and all the movies Tony Stark / Iron Man appeared a hit. So what does the future look like? I know it's a very vague question, but on one hand they will have this niche type of secondary characters that will appeal to certain demographics, but on the other hand, their MVPs, their key players, will no longer be joining the franchise. What's your take on this?
So I think two things can happen. They can still make a lot of individual stories, like Widow. Like, we have so many characters that they don't have their own movie yet. That can happen. So we can discover new characters, and we can give them maybe more. We can give it more importance that they had before. For example, not all the Avengers had their own movies, so they can go this way. And it can also, we can have a new generation of superheroes, such as Spider-Man Far From Home is a new upcoming movie, and I think the idea is that he's going to be the new Iron Man, because that's what's going to be expected from him. and we can see a new generation of superheroes. I don't see that. I can see that happening, especially for new generations to come. This is working, and I don't think they're gonna stop trying to make it work. So yeah.
Sure. Sure. No, it makes perfect sense.
And also, we haven't talked about the DC universe, but I think
It will be the next question, actually.
Oh, okay, okay.
I was just gonna finalize this saying I just hope they remake Howard the Duck because I would be first in line to see that. Uh, yeah, so talking about DC actually, so we took now that Disney was very successful in doing the MCU, and actually, the key question, well, we'll move to DC, but the key question would be, so if they are going to give the new characters or characters they haven't given a movie yet, they will probably stick to the old formula, which is the introduction of the hero, the complication, etc., the basic storyline. So that could hinder a bit because, or audiences' expectations, because they will be expecting something the likes of the Avengers, right? So each movie elevated the demand or the expectations from the audience. But still, looking at Warner and what they've been trying to do with the DC universe, it clearly, I wouldn't say it failed, but it's clearly not working, right? So we're talking about what, 5 movies? You have Wonder Woman, the Justice League one, Batman vs Superman, and Man of Steel, if I'm corrected.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's clearly a lower output than expected, and part of it is because the movies haven't been performing as they should, or as studios and audiences expected. Your view on this, what's the reason? Because they seem to be, they took a dark approach, which was in line with what Nolan did for Warner with Batman, but that didn't work with the new characters and with the new universe.
Yeah, I think that I think they came a little bit late to play, so it's very difficult to compete with the MCU because they've been doing it for so long and they've been doing it really well because they are very consistent, right? So when you have I think consistency is key, especially when you want to do something as ambitious as Infinity War and when you want to bring all these superheroes together, people they have to feel themselves attached and they have to understand the superheroes, the characters. But I think the DC universe has actually been portrayed for so many different actors, and we have so many different movies, right? We don't have different people playing Iron Man. Iron Man, everyone knows is Robert Downey Jr., right? So I think audiences can really identify themselves with that. Whereas in the DC universe, it's been all over the place, and that's really difficult to stick. To get people, to audiences to stick with that. People that like superheroes, of course, they go to see the DC movies. But I also think the consistency of the quality of the movies is not right. Batman vs Superman was not a great film, and I didn't enjoy it myself, and not because there was a lot of like stories, issues, and if every single movie you do of each character is good and is portrayed by the same person, and you have consistency, I think is key. Whereas Wonder Woman and Justice League was great, for example, but you have good movies, bad movies, and people is not feeling comfortable. I don't think is the same, and it's going to be very difficult to accomplish something like the MCU.
Well, I completely forgot to mention Aquaman, and obviously I choose not to mention Suicide Squad.
Oh my god, yeah.
Let's just say that I actually went to the movies for a non-superhero fan. I actually paid to see Suicide Squad, but
Me too.
so I'm still digesting that one, and that was 3 years ago. But I'm.
But yeah,
That's the consistency, right? So many people it's disappointed. So I don't think, I don't think they're doing it right. I don't know what would be the case, how they can improve, but yeah.
Yeah, it's very very interesting because, for example, let's take a character that is and probably always will be played by the same actor. So Nick Fury, Samuel L. Jackson,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
He's a supporting character, but kind of isn't, because it's sort of the tying link across all characters. Sorry if I'm offending any comic book fan that thinks otherwise, but at least that's my perspective as a non-hardcore fan. But yeah, I get what you're saying. For example, now Batman will be played by Robert Pattinson. I mean, I really don't know what to make of it. I've been critical of castings before, namely Heath Ledger back in 2007. So I stopped making judgments on that. But I would love to hear the take of a fan and a professional in the movie business on Robert Pattinson's casting as the Batman.
Well, I think actually, I think Twilight really, it was, Twilight really hurt his reputation. I don't think he's a bad actor. I just think that we really have another type of person to portray Batman, right? And I don't think we associate Robert Pattinson with that character. But maybe he's gonna surprise us all. I really want to see. I don't like to judge before I see, so I'm really interested actually in see what kind of Batman
he will be. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I have to say I watched the first Twilight movie a long time ago for due to pressure from my girlfriend at the time. But I've actually watched one of his movies released a couple of years ago, Cosmopolis, directed by David Cronenberg, and yeah, again that didn't work out like him as an actor, but still I'm not very familiar with his with all of his acting credits, so I won't be judging, but definitely an interesting casting. Back to what we were saying about consistency. It's very interesting that I believe Disney, and then to a certain extent even Fox, they were able to deal with consistency across multiple genres. And for example, a lot of people tell me, oh, you don't like superheroes, but you really have to see Thor Ragnarok because like Jeff Goldblum and all these like neon and very 80s type of scenarios. Then people said the same thing 5 years ago when they said, oh, you need to watch Guardians of the Galaxy. And I did, and I even bought the soundtrack on vinyl. And the same thing around Deadpool, right? Deadpool is still one of the few characters that I will say, yes, I will be there on opening day because I really enjoy and I have a great time when I watch a Deadpool character. So, do you think they actually, that consistency, it's a big effort, but do you believe that they actually were able to take that consistency across genres? So, for example, Deadpool is a superhero comedy, if you will.
Yeah, it is. I think Deadpool is a genre on its own because, yeah, for example, my husband, he doesn't like superhero movies at all. His favorite character, his favorite superhero is Deadpool. Because I think he just makes fun of all the superhero movies. Like, he's like just he himself. He makes fun of himself. He doesn't take himself very seriously, and I think that's key. Because, you know, superheroes always take themselves, they are the heroes, of course, and they save the day, and they do take themselves very seriously. And sometimes I understand why this doesn't appeal to everyone, because it's like, oh my God, really? But Deadpool is everything that they are not. So I understand why people like him, because he's unbelievable. So yeah, but I think it's a genre on its own. I wouldn't put him in any other universe because, yeah.
I would completely agree. And picking up on that, an interesting question. So I've never read the comics, but I'm aware that Iron Man / Tony Stark, he was an alcoholic, right? But because the property is owned by Disney and because they make family-friendly movies, I'm not saying they don't have any violence, because then we wouldn't have the Avengers. But they don't go into that detail. If I'm correct, I haven't watched his latest movies. But again, do you think that's actually, was it Disney producing these movies that made them the light and yet crowd pleasing successes that they are? Or is it was it if the property had been developed by, say, Fox or even a Paramount, as it was originally owned, would it would they have chosen to actually go the same route as The Dark Knight and just go into a dark movie that deals with all these kinds of problems?
Yeah, I think I understand what you mean, and I think it's true. Disney know, and actually Disney knows how to make films for like family film, right? And I think that was key for the MCU to work, because precisely because it's not as dark as X-Men or any other superhero movie or Batman or the DC. Precisely because of that, they have all the success they have, because it pleases everyone. It's a crowd pleaser, and there's gonna be people that they don't want to see issues. They don't want to see like they want to have they want to have fun in the movies, and they don't want to have a drama. People goes for action and to have a good time, and I think that's key. This is one of the reasons why the MCU and Disney have to work together, and I kind of understand that. And for me, I think Disney made it work, but yeah, if it was owned by any other company, it would be completely different, and maybe not that successful for sure.
Exactly. So again, the conclusion would be it isn't the property itself that sells as is. It's actually Disney's take on existing properties that make them work.
I think they do.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I think one question, now that we're halfway through, that I would love to ask is, what is your favorite superhero movie?
That's a difficult one. That's a very difficult one because I really like The Dark Knight. But I did enjoy a lot Infinity War. And maybe my favorite MCU superhero movie might be Guardians of the Galaxy, because of the ensemble cast, and it's really funny at the same time, and I really like the humor, and yeah. But my favorite superhero is Iron Man, so yeah, there's a lot of takes on that.
Yeah, no, I would say that Deadpool definitely does it for me, but again, it will be now part of I guess Disney's portfolio, but definitely Deadpool. Within MCU, it was Iron Man. Again, I've watched all three Iron Man movies, and I went to see the first two Avenger movies, driven mainly by Robert Downey Jr. and his comeback to Hollywood. So,
Yeah.
and it was really enjoyable. I recall 9 years ago when they released Iron Man 2, the video clips for AC/DC's Shoot to Thrill, when Tony Stark jumps out of an airplane, and it was like, whoa, wow, crazy. So it definitely clicked. Then again, I was also a big fan of Batman, and I have to say, I did enjoy Man of Steel. Regardless of all the criticism, it was a movie that I really enjoyed, and I didn't leave the cinema feeling, oh, I just wasted time and money on something. It was quite enjoyable. I don't know what's your take on Henry Cavill's first entry as the Man of Steel?
I think the cast is perfect because he is Superman. So I think Henry Cavill is quite good as Superman, and I did like Man of Steel. But the thing is that with Batman and Superman, then everything kind of, it blur a little bit. But then they fixed it on, for me, they fixed it on Justice League. I really enjoyed Henry Cavill as Superman, and having also, it was a little bit like, he had some issues, and it was really interesting to watch. I know it was not as successful as any other MCU movie, but I think Justice League did it. It was really good.
Yeah. I at the time I think I skipped it mainly because of all the backlash around Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
So and that was a bit the Martha situation. I'm aware of it. I haven't seen it, but I figured, wow. The first thing I thought was wow, and then the second thing was, how would I have felt had I paid to watch that? So yeah, I was quite relieved. But again, it was something that for me, I recall watching Man of Steel, and it was groundbreaking in the sense of it took Superman to a very different route other than what we had seen with Christopher Reeve, and even with that dreadful Brandon Routh movie from 2006, Superman Returns, which again
Yeah,
people choose to forget.
yeah. I
Uh,
don't think I even seen that one.
Oh, I went to the movies to see that one. Back when
No.
Kevin Spacey was still an actor, you could say, "Wow, he did a good job." So he actually did a good job as Lex Luthor, not as zany as Jesse Eisenberg or even Gene Hackman, but he was a bit more grounded, yet with a certain take of over the topness, if you will.
Yeah, no, I think I also grew up watching Superman, the classics, of course. So it was refreshing to have a new face and a new cast, and I think it was a really good movie. Yeah.
Even Superhero 4 is Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my, Supergirl. I remember watching. I watched everything regarding superheroes. Even my grandma liked the classic Superman. So yeah.
I know it was a big thing, but again, it was. And I even recall one of my very first memories of actually going to the movies, and I recall seeing the poster for Batman Forever. I was 5 back then when with the Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones and whatnot. I was like, wow, when I'm older, I need to see this one. But then again, that very same year, I was very excited with the poster. I was a very excited kid, I guess, but I was very excited with the poster for Waterworld. So, I mean, take it with a pinch of salt, you know. I was anything that looked mildly amusing on a poster, I would say, I want to watch this. So yeah, and then I watched both. I enjoyed Batman Forever. I did not enjoy Waterworld, but that's a whole different story. Yeah, I guess the next aspect will be I think the most controversial question of them all, which is for more than a decade now we've been talking about the impacts and what made superhero movies successful, cinematic universes, and definitely they made a contribution to the current state of the industry. My thoughts, at least, is that there's a specific downside that we're seeing now and that we'll continue to see in the foreseeable future, is that they've actually, I mean, they were released as a way for studios to bet on short things that were able to develop a solid audience and minimize the risk that's associated with independent or smaller budget productions. So you would have more Spider-Man, less Forrest Gump. So that's my view on it. And at the same time, audiences responded by fulfilling their role, which is paying to see those movies. Now we're creating a vicious cycle that dictates that yes, this is the way to go. So there really is. That's the only thing we'll actually be producing. So if you look at Disney's rooster for the year, they have live action adaptations. So they released Dumbo in March, Aladdin a month ago, and in a couple of weeks we'll have The Lion King. At the same time, we had the Avengers, and then we'll have probably another superhero movie and Pixar with Toy Story 4. Which was released last week. So essentially, I'm seeing it's a very like 3 boxes that they tap and they put a movie out, and that's simply it. And I know you're a fan, but no matter how positive and upbeat you want to be about it, there is a formula, like in all movies. But we are actually seeing less and less of riskier productions. So my take is that the superhero movies did well, and they made some changes, but now they're simply taking airwaves that should have been or could have been taken by new non-IP led stories. It's controversial, I know, but I would love to hear the other side of the coin on this question.
No, it's a really good question. Well, of course, as a film lover, I do go to the cinema to watch a lot of movies, and superheroes is just a small percentage of the different genres I watch. But I understand that people pays to go see superhero movies, and maybe they will forget, or they are not just interested in watch other quality and really good movies as well. That they may not have action or special effects, but they're still good. But I actually, how can I explain? So one of my favorite directors, for example, is Yorgos Lantimos. I don't know if you know him. So the thing, yeah, exactly. So he is a genre on his own as well, and I thought his movies were very niche and very independent. But we saw him winning an Oscar two Oscars last year. And The Favorite was there, and that was really really beautiful to see, because you can see a lot of quality movies going to the Oscars and being supported by the industry. But I think that at the end of the day, whatever, because I work on marketing also, but marketing is really important, and who has money has marketing, and who can make big budget movies is going to have a lot of money to make marketing of those movies as well. So at the end of the day is how you can how you can promote the movie. So I don't think that they're going to take on the whole industry. I just think that it's a small percentage, and maybe people who never even care about cinema before is going to see these movies now. But people who is enjoying, who goes to the cinema, usually I'm not telling people that is actually a film lover and they watch every single movie in the cinema like me, but people who goes to the cinema and pays to see superhero movies, it might be a good introduction to the film industry, and they may be interested in watch other movies. But I still I understand what you mean. I think unfortunately money is an important thing, and as long as movies make money, they will continue. It's an industry. I know it's an art, but at the end of the day, it's an industry.
It's an industry. I get it. It's just.
I know it's very difficult because actually there is a lot of, it's an art as well, and I see it as an art, but people, they do this for a living, right? And some people is there for the art and for the love for movies, and some people is there for the money. And I think that's the most risky thing. It's like music, right? You're going to have very niche music and really good music, and then you're going to have music where it's more like commercial, people is there for the money. So it's a very difficult question, actually, because I don't think they will take over. I just think that they will keep, as long as they're making money, because they're going to keep doing it. And that's, but I want to hope that that's not going to take over every single genre. I really hope not.
You're right. Although I have to pick on something you said about actually movies being released and being nominated for Oscars. Those movies are actually made as sort of, some of them as prestige. I don't want to use the term Oscar bait, but prestige, very targeted niche products. And some of them fail, like Battle of the Sexes 2 years ago with Emma Stone and Steve Carell. I found it to be a great movie. It was included on my top 10 for 2017. But again, it's one of those things. It's a movie that was made by an Academy Award winner, an Academy Award nominee actor, and it was promoted as such. So those movies aren't actually, they're not made for the general audience. They're prestige, yeah. and they'll never get that appeal. And picking up on that, it's very interesting because I don't know if you recall, but 10 years ago, Hugh Jackman hosted the Oscars, and I recall his opening act. I'm not really a fan of the musical acts in the Oscars or any other ceremony, but I recall a distinct line where he claimed he wanted to see the reader, but he was stuck in line behind all the people watching Iron Man a second time. So it actually, it's true. You can watch it on YouTube later. So it actually, like, even 10 years ago, this was already a thing, right? And to pick up the example of the reader, I didn't watch the reader. I actually watched Iron Man, not 2 times, but so because those movies they didn't have that room to breathe or even to grow and develop. And again, taking a step back, and based on what you said, made me reassess a bit my statement. And I think, yes, it is an industry. It is there to make money. And if that's what's selling, if it's the yellow T-shirt that sells, we'll produce tons of yellow T-shirts. If it's Iron Man, we'll produce Iron Man.
Exactly.
The thing is, really, it's Yeah, it's pretty much it. But I believe that the whole concept of the importance of the opening weekend sort of contributed. First of all, it was accentuated by superhero movies, because nowadays you have, oh, Star Wars is pulled down 250 million, yeah, but Avengers will pull 275, so breaking the records and whatnot, and Jurassic World is going to be in the lead as well. So it's all of that. It was aggravated by those type of tentpole movies, because people's, I mean, you work in marketing, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but people's attention span are shorter, and they
Yeah.
want to have it, and they want to have it now. So the opening weekend was a result, as opposed to what happened before, when a movie used to open in the market and then slowly, gradually expand, and that's how you got to see the likes of Rain Man and Crocodile Dundee and even Forrest Gump. They started in like opening in select theaters, and then the success would dictate the expansion. We then evolve into the opening weekend everywhere, and you need to see it this weekend, because probably in 2 weeks' time there'll be another big thing there, and you won't be able to see it anymore. So I think that sort of hinders the. It was something that occurred and was aggravated by superhero movies. Now I think the current output, every 2 months you have a new one, just that can be blamed on superhero movies alone. And I mean, I'm really skeptical about how long can we go without superhero fatigue. That's simply it. Because I mean, when will people? How long will people can keep going on every 2 months to see a similar story? Sorry. How sustainable is this? So that's the question I've been sort of trying to think about and trying to answer.
Yeah, I see your point. Maybe it's not the blame. It's not to blame the superhero movies, but maybe movies are not promoted properly. There is such a team, a huge team of marketing behind all those movies, and maybe they should just work on their promotion and marketing, and they should. I know they do interviews and appear in magazines, and you kind of what the reader is, and who is starring on it. But maybe we should have more of that, and more people going to talk shows, and not only actors who are on superhero movies. I want to see all kinds of actors on all the talk shows, and maybe it should be working towards the other side. Not blame superhero movies because they are taking over, but maybe making the other movies more appealing. And I talk a lot to so many people about so many movies that they don't know. And this is maybe I want to think our Instagrams help for that, and people kind of.
We definitely try. We definitely try.
Yeah.
Although my last review was of Godzilla King of Monsters, so I'm not part of the solution, part of the problem. I agree with you, but let me ask you this question, especially as a film lover and a marketing expert. I mean, let's take two movies. You have, I don't know, let's not use one like Flyman. Fictional superhero movie with a budget of 150 million, and then we have the story of Joe, car mechanic with I don't know, some kind of disease, right? And it has a 20 million budget movie. It has a budget of 20 million, right? So we have 150, 20. Now, to get into talk shows, it will cost both the 150 and the 20 million movie the same thing to get the leading actor into that. Into Trevor Noah or even Conan O'Brien or Stephen Colbert. Now, the issue there is that people, even I don't watch talk shows anymore. I used to, but I don't watch them anymore. So and I believe that the demographic younger than us, so the current teenagers, they don't watch it either. So actually, that won't be the specific channel. So what you're suggesting is a more targeted marketing towards the specific channels in which people appear. That's fine, but again, if we're saying the Flyboy will be targeted on Snapchat to get teenagers to go and see it, fine, and then we'll have the movie that has a 20 million budget, they won't be able to take the slot that usually used to be taken by those guys from the big budget productions, right? So that's not, I don't believe that's a viable option. And the other thing, I mean, just to take as an example, I became aware of Spider-Man. I was aware that a new movie comes out because I followed the industry trade. But yesterday on the tube, and I mean you're in London as well, so I don't know if you noticed, but the stand on the right sides, the sound bites that they have on the tube was actually voiced by the actor playing Peter Parker.
Yeah.
So I was a bit like, oh, okay, so I have all the posters as I leave the tube stop in Oxford Circus, and now I have his voice reminding me to stay on the right. So yeah, but I mean, so that's the kind of budget. I mean, I can imagine if you do
Yeah.
TV posters and even this type of initiative. I mean, I mean, it requires a big budget. And how do you think that actually this is not to do with superhero movies, but how can a mid budget or a small budget venture actually communicate and make itself heard without word of mouth, without resorting to word of mouth?
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean, and of course it makes sense. The more money you have, and there is competition. So I understand that. You're completely right. But I've also seen a lot of promotion around Midsommar. I don't know. Yeah, and that's not like a superhero movie. That's a horror movie, which usually they I don't know how to put it, but horror movies, they don't have the best of fames because people just think they are just bad movies because they're horror. But we saw a change with Hereditary, and people was really impressed with a Quiet Place. I did not like Hereditary, so
Thank you,
Yeah, yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I know my friends will be listening to this, and they know my position on Hereditary, and I immediately took the same position on Midsommar.
yeah. But I was actually happy because even if it's not my favorite genre, it's a very niche genre. Horror films are not are definitely not one of the most valuable genres right now in the industry. So I was kind of happy to see that happening. I saw a lot of posters on the tube, and I saw a lot of promotion about, and I was kind of happy. I was feeling happy that we can see Spider-Man and Midsommar in the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
Fair enough. Although I have to argue that now what you see as well, sort of a cash cow, but in a different scale in terms of budget, it was what we had in the '80s with Friday the 13th, and even last decade with Saw, right? So
Yeah.
it's actually something bankable that you produce for 15, 20 million, maybe even less. You get a decent opening weekend, and that's it. And when it stops making money, you stop making. When it hits the point of diminishing returns, you stop making sequels. And that's what happened with Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and even Saw.
Yeah.
So I don't see them. Yeah, some of them don't have the quality, but guess what? They are still bankable, and they're
Yeah.
still like a cinematic universe that people don't talk about is the Insidious and Annabelle. I mean, I keep a tab. They're not amazing performers, but they do very well. And you have what, 7 of those movies with spin-offs and sequels. So
Yeah.
I mean, even if you don't vouch for the quality, you can't deny that they work and they do their job. They're also part of the problem where you have a good opening weekend. Even last weekend, Child's Play. I mean, a $10 million budget. It opened with 14. Probably will make around 35, something like that. It's fine. And casual viewers will see it as an alternative. And even, I think reviewers were very positive about Child's Play because it actually took a fresh take. Although I still believe that Chucky looks like he went through Botox. That's my view. I grew up with the original. But I think that the new take on the story, it's quite refreshing, and even people who, they will say, don't waste your money and go to the big screen, but definitely catch it whenever you have a chance. So
Yeah.
I think you do have a point, but let's not forget that they are bankable, and when you take the point of being on the tube and seeing Midsommar advertised on every other station, yeah, it's still print, but it's not at the same scale as Spider-Man. I mean, honestly, yesterday the Oxford Circus tube stop was completely filled. Every single poster I could turn to had Samuel L. Jackson, pictures of London, and then even the voice of the guy who plays Peter Parker. So I was like, whoa. I need to watch the movie. No, but that's marketing, yeah. But just out of curiosity, what do you think is the next, or what's the new buzz in town in terms of marketing for movies? Is it Snapchat? Is it which platform in which?
Well, I don't work for any clients at the moment that like a production companies. I would like to actually, but I think a really good marketing place for independent movies are festivals. So one of my friends, she works as a what's the name? She works in the Sundance film festival. Yeah, and she just I forgot what's the technical name, but she basically chooses the content of the festival. And she came to London because they did like a small version, and I was invited to the opening party, and it was really interesting because she gave me tickets to see The Farewell. I don't know, I don't know if you know about it.
I recall seeing like in an article about several movies on the Venice Film Festival and Cannes and whatnot.
Yeah, so I think festivals are a really good way. For example, this is this movie was the first feature film of this director, and we had a Q&A with the director after the movie, and it was a fantastic movie. It was really really well done. It was about it was about immigration of a Chinese family living in the United States, and then going back to China because of the illness of the grandma, and well, it was really really good to see, and I think festivals are a really good way to kind of promote new movies, because this movie has been it was voted like the favorite of the public, but it was also is also gaining a lot of fame, and it was yesterday I believe it was the LA premiere. So yeah, I think festivals are a really good way to go. People still going to festivals, and festivals do support a lot of independent movies. So yeah, we should go more, maybe more to festivals, film festivals, to kind of know all these niche and new movies coming up, and it should be more affordable also.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have been at least correlated with Academy Award success. When you see Telluride or Venice or even the Toronto Film Festival, they usually you have some correlation there. But still, I mean, Cannes this year was, I guess, everybody wanted to get a ticket to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So I am looking forward to see that one. But yeah, I mean, movie wise, I mean, with superheroes, let's see what else drives me. I believe the next Deadpool, if they make one, I will go there. But definitely for this year, if I have to see one superhero movie ish, it will be The Joker.
That's yeah. I'm really looking forward to that.
Okay. So maybe then the next step will be when the movie comes out, we have a joint review and what we thought about it. If you
Oh,
if you
that's a
don't
great
mind,
idea.
that's the next project, next episode. Listen, thank you very much for your.
Thank you. It was really really fun. Thank you so much for inviting.
And that's it for this episode.